Imagine a world consumed by conflict, a world where the very fabric of society is torn apart by the relentless march of war. Picture the faces of young men full of hope and dreams, now hardened by the brutal realities of battle. A world where millions of young men marched off to war, never to return. They left behind families, friends, and futures, stepping into the unknown with a sense of duty and patriotism. The farewells were often tearful, filled with promises of a swift return that many would never fulfill. This wasn't a scene from a dystopian novel. It was the devastating reality of World War I. The battlefields were a hellscape of mud, blood, and barbed wire, where survival was a daily struggle, and death was a constant companion. From 1914 to 1918, Europe and eventually the world descended into a maelstrom of unprecedented violence and destruction. The war spread like wildfire, engulfing nations and drawing in millions of soldiers and civilians alike. This Great War, as it was initially known, shattered empires, redrew the map of Europe, and left an enduring legacy of sorrow and instability. Cities were reduced to rubble, and entire generations were lost to the carnage. The aftermath was a landscape of grief and desolation, where the scars of war were etched into the very earth. World War I was a conflict unlike any other, a clash of empires fueled by nationalism, imperialism, and a complex web of alliances. Propaganda played a crucial role, stirring up fervor and hatred, while alliances and treaties bound nations together in a deadly dance of destruction. It was a war that introduced the world to the horrors of trench warfare, poison gas, and industrialized killing on a scale never before imagined. The trenches were a nightmarish labyrinth where soldiers lived, fought, and died in appalling conditions. Poison gas added a new dimension of terror, causing agonizing deaths and lingering injuries. The war's echoes continue to resonate today, shaping our understanding of conflict, peace, and the fragility of the international order. Modern-day memorials and remembrance ceremonies serve as poignant reminders of the sacrifices made and the lessons learned. The story of World War I is one of tragedy, heroism, and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable suffering. Amidst the horror, there were countless acts of bravery and compassion as soldiers and medics risked their lives to save others. The camaraderie and solidarity forged in the trenches are a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. It is a story that demands to be told, not just to remember the fallen, but also to learn from the mistakes of the past and strive for a more peaceful future. By honoring the memory of those who perished and reflecting on the causes and consequences of the war, we can work towards a world where such a conflict never happens again. To understand the eruption of World War I, we must journey back to the early 20th century, to a Europe simmering with tension and distrust. Nationalism, a potent force that emphasized national identity and pride, coursed through the veins of Europe's great powers. Each nation viewed itself as superior, fostering rivalry and deep suspicion among them. Adding fuel to the fire was the scramble for colonies, a defining feature of the era of imperialism. European powers, hungry for resources and prestige, engaged in a fierce competition for control of territories in Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. This competition for empire created new rivalries and deepened existing ones, setting the stage for a global conflict. Further complicating matters was a tangled web of alliances. These agreements, intended to deter aggression, ironically served to magnify the risk of war. Like a house of cards, the collapse of one power threatened to bring down the entire precarious structure. In this volatile environment, a single spark had the potential to ignite a continental and eventually global conflagration, changing the world forever. That fateful spark came on a sunny June day in 1914, in the city of Sarajevo, Bosnia. The air was filled with anticipation and the streets were bustling with activity. It was a day like any other, yet it would soon be etched into the annals of history. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife Sophie, were visiting the city on a day that would forever alter the course of history. They were there to inspect the imperial armed forces in Bosnia and Herzegovina, annexed by Austria-Hungary in 1908. The couple was well received by the public, unaware of the looming danger. As their motorcade made its way through the streets, a young Serbian nationalist, Gavrilo Princip, seized his opportunity. Princip was a member of the Black Hand, a secret society committed to ending Austro-Hungarian rule in the Balkans. The tension in the air was palpable as the motorcade approached. With a pistol in hand, Princip fatally shot the Archduke and his wife, sending shockwaves through Europe. The assassination was not just a tragic event but a catalyst that set off a chain reaction. The streets of Sarajevo erupted into chaos as news of the assassination spread like wildfire. Austria-Hungary, outraged by the assassination, blamed Serbia for harboring the assassins and issued a series of harsh demands. The ultimatum was designed to be unacceptable, giving Austria-Hungary a pretext to initiate military action. The political climate grew increasingly volatile. Serbia, backed by its powerful ally, Russia, refused to comply with all of Austria-Hungary's demands. The refusal was seen as an act of defiance, and diplomatic efforts to resolve the crisis were quickly failing. The alliances that had been formed over decades were now being put to the test. The fragile peace that had held Europe together for decades began to crumble. The assassination had exposed the underlying tensions and rivalries between the great powers. The intricate web of alliances and treaties that had maintained a delicate balance was now unraveling. Within weeks of the assassination, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, triggering a chain reaction of alliances. The declaration of war set off a domino effect as countries were drawn into the conflict due to their mutual defense agreements. The world was on the brink of a massive upheaval. Germany, bound by treaty to Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia and its ally, France. The German war machine was mobilized with unprecedented speed and efficiency. The declarations of war were coming in quick succession, each one escalating the situation further. Great Britain, obligated to defend Belgium's neutrality after Germany invaded the small nation, declared war on Germany. The invasion of Belgium was a strategic move by Germany to quickly advance into France, but it brought Britain into the conflict. The stage was set for a global confrontation. In a matter of weeks, the major powers of Europe were at war, their armies mobilizing for a conflict that would forever change the world. The assassination in Sarajevo had ignited a firestorm, leading to the outbreak of World War I, a war that would reshape nations and alter the course of history. As armies clashed on the battlefields of Europe, a new and terrifying form of warfare emerged: trench warfare. This brutal method of combat defined the First World War, creating a static and grueling front line that stretched across the continent. The soldiers who fought in these trenches faced unimaginable horrors daily, transforming the landscape into a scene of perpetual devastation. Soldiers on both sides dug vast networks of trenches stretching for hundreds of miles across the European landscape. These trenches were not just simple ditches, they were complex systems with front line, support, and reserve trenches, all connected by communication trenches. The construction of these networks required immense effort and time, often under the threat of enemy fire. These trenches, separated by a desolate expanse of land known as no man's land, became a nightmarish world of mud, blood, and death. No man's land was a deadly zone filled with barbed wire, craters from artillery shells, and the bodies of fallen soldiers. Venturing into this area often meant certain death, as it was exposed to enemy fire from both sides. Life in the trenches was a living hell. Soldiers lived in constant fear and discomfort, enduring the elements and the ever-present threat of enemy attack. The trenches were often waterlogged, leading to conditions like trench foot, a painful and debilitating affliction caused by prolonged exposure to damp and unsanitary conditions. Soldiers endured constant bombardment from artillery, machine guns, and mortars. The relentless shelling created a cacophony of noise and destruction, leaving soldiers with shell shock, a condition now known as PTSD. The psychological toll of this unending barrage was immense, with many soldiers struggling to cope with the trauma. The threat of sniper fire was ever present, and the air was thick with the stench of death and decay. Snipers targeted anyone who dared to show themselves above the trench line, making even the simplest tasks perilous. The smell of decaying bodies, unwashed soldiers, and the general filth of the trenches created an unbearable atmosphere. Disease was rampant, and rats, lice, and other vermin infested the trenches, adding to the misery of the soldiers. These pests spread diseases like trench fever and typhus, further weakening the already exhausted troops. The soldiers' struggle against these conditions was a constant battle, one that took a heavy toll on their health and morale. World War I also witnessed the introduction of new and terrifying weapons of war. Among these, poison gas stood out as one of the most feared. First used by the Germans in 1915, gas attacks caused panic and chaos. as soldiers scrambled to put on their gas masks. The effects of the gas were devastating, causing blindness, severe blisters, and death by asphyxiation. Poison gas, a horrifying innovation, was used to deadly effect, leaving soldiers to die agonizing deaths from asphyxiation or horrific burns. The use of gas warfare marked a new low in the brutality of combat, as it inflicted suffering not just on the battlefield but also in the trenches, where the gas could linger and cause prolonged agony. The machine gun, capable of firing hundreds of rounds per minute, transformed battlefields into killing fields. This weapon's efficiency in mowing down advancing troops made traditional charges across no man's land almost suicidal. The sheer volume of firepower meant that entire waves of soldiers could be cut down in minutes, leading to staggering casualties. Tanks, a new invention, lumbered across the battlefields, crushing everything in their path. These armored vehicles were designed to break the deadlock of trench warfare, providing mobile cover for advancing infantry. Though initially slow and prone to mechanical failure, tanks eventually became a crucial element in breaking through enemy lines. These technological advancements made World War I one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. The combination of trench warfare, new weapons, and the sheer scale of the conflict resulted in unprecedented levels of destruction and loss of life. The war left a lasting legacy, shaping the course of the 20th century and serving as a grim reminder of the horrors of modern warfare.